Hello Gaudi, and welcome to today's wider curriculum lesson. A little bit of science, a little bit of history. But before we start, I wanted to show you something. So after I'd finished recording yesterday's lesson, my daughter was asking me what we were doing. And I was talking about making constellations. My piece of paper with the holes in was sitting on the table. And she said, why hadn't I shown you the way she made constellations once when she was at school? So I promised I would do that today. So she started with a glass jar and a piece of black paper. And you can possibly see that she's poked her name. That was her constellation. She's poked her name in the black paper. And then what she did was she rolled up the black paper and she put it inside the jar. Then she got a night light and she put the night light inside the jar. So that when the night light is on, you can see the stars through the paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the lights off in here and see if we can see that slightly more clearly. And hopefully you can see the light shining through. It changes colour because the night light changes colour, but you can see it coming through the paper and changing colour. So I just thought I'd share that with you. And then if you wanted to make something like that at home, it's pretty easy to do. Now for today's lesson. We're going to look at what we've remembered about what we've learned this half term. So you're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil or a whiteboard. And what I'd really like is I'd like you to not have an adult with you for this lesson. I'd like you to try and do this by yourself so you can see what you can remember, please. Right, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions. And each of the questions has got 4 different answers, A, B, C, or D. And what you're going to do is you're just going to write A, B, C, or D, whichever answer you think is right. Only one of those is going to be right for each question. And then we're going to mark it together. So it doesn't matter if you get it wrong. I'm not taking in scores. I just want to see, I want you to see, more importantly, what it is you can remember about what you have learned this term. So there are 10 questions, but there is a bonus question at one point. So question 1. What was the name of the astronomer who lived in Slough and first discovered Uranus? So your 4 choices are A, Caroline Herschel, B, Christopher Herschel, C, Walter Herschel, or D, William Herschel. I'll repeat the question and then explain to you what you need to do. So what was the name of the astronomer who lived in Slough and first discovered Uranus? A, Caroline Herschel, B, Christopher Herschel, C, Walter Herschel, or D, William Herschel. And all you need to write is A, B, C, or D. You do not need to write the name, just the letter A, B, C, or D, which one you think it is. If you need more time, pause the video. And then like I said, I'm going to give you the answers as we go along. So the answer to that one was D, William Herschel. Caroline Herschel was his sister. Question 2. Why do astronauts need to exercise in space? Is it A, so their muscles don't waste away, B, to keep busy, C, to make the ISS move, or D, so that they can eat more? So why do astronauts need to exercise in space? Is it A, so their muscles don't waste away, B, to keep busy, C, to make the ISS move, or D, so they can eat more? And again, you are just writing A, B, C, or D, whichever one of those you think is right. And if you need more time, pause the video. And the answer is A, so their muscles don't waste away. Because they don't need to use their muscles to keep them upright on the ISS because there's no gravity. So they just float. We use our muscles just to sit up, lie down. We use muscles all the time. Question 3. What is the name of the fourth planet from the Sun? And if you remember, we made up a mnemonic to help us remember the order of the planets. So what is the name of the fourth planet from the Sun? Is it A, Venus, B, Mars, C, Earth, or D, Mercury? Which one of those is the fourth planet from the Sun? Again, if you need more time, pause the video. Which one do you think is the fourth planet? Venus, Mars, Earth, or Mercury? And again, just write the letter. And the answer is Mars. Venus, Mercury, Earth, Mars. Jupiter, Saturn. Uranus, Neptune, and that's Pluto, which is not a planet anymore. It was when I was at school, but it's not anymore. It's a dwarf planet now. Right, question 4. What does ISS stand for? So we kept talking about the ISS. Does it stand for A, the Intergalactic Space Station, B, the Intergalactic Space Satellite, C, the International Space Station, or D, the International Space Satellite? So what does ISS stand for? And again, you're just writing A, B, C, or D. Do you think it's the Intergalactic Space Station, the Intergalactic Space Satellite, the International Space Station, or the International Space Satellite? And again, if you need more time, just pause the video. And the answer is C. It's the International Space Station. Question 5. Who was the first British person to live on the ISS? So who was the first British person to live on the ISS? Was it A, Helen Sharman, B, Neil Armstrong, C, Yuri Gagarin, or D, Tim Peake? So which one of those was the first British person to live on the ISS? A, Helen Sharman, B, Neil Armstrong, C, Yuri Gagarin, or D, Tim Peake? Just writing A, B, C, or D. And the answer is Tim Peake. Tim Peake was the first British person to live on the ISS for 6 months. Okay, next question. Who was the first person to walk on the moon? So again, is it A, Helen Sharman, B, Neil Armstrong, C, Yuri Gagarin, or D, Tim Peake? So which one of those, and it's the same 4 people as we had for the last question, which one of those was the first person to walk on the moon? So A, Helen Sharman, B, Neil Armstrong, C, Yuri Gagarin, or D, Tim Peake? Just the letter. And the answer is Neil Armstrong. And we have the same 4 people again. Who was the first person to go into space? So again, was it A, Helen Sharman, B, Neil Armstrong, C, Yuri Gagarin, or D, Tim Peake? Who was the first person to go into space? So A, Helen Sharman, and you're just writing A if you think it's her. B, Neil Armstrong, just writing B. C, Yuri Gagarin, and just writing C. Or D, Tim Peake, just writing D. And the answer was Yuri Gagarin. So here's our bonus question. We've left out Helen Sharman. So we looked at the fact that Yuri Gagarin was the first person in space, Tim Peake was the first British person to live on the ISS, and Neil Armstrong was the first person to walk on the moon. So for a bonus point, what is Helen Sharman famous for? Now you might need to pause the video because you are going to have to write this one. It isn't a multiple choice one, but what is Helen Sharman famous for? And when you're ready, you can carry on with the video. So she's famous for being the first British person in space, and she was also the first British person to go to the Mir space station in 1991. Question 8. Which of these picnic foods could an astronaut eat in space? So, is it A, an apple, B, breadsticks, C, crackers, or D, a wrap? Which one of the picnic foods could an astronaut eat in space? So, if you think it's an apple, you're just going to write A. If you think it's breadsticks, you're just going to write B. If you think it's crackers, you're going to write C. And if you think it's a wrap, you're going to write D. And the answer is a wrap. Can you remember why they can't eat the others? Well, they wouldn't be able to eat breadsticks and crackers because they make crumbs and they'd get into the air filters. And they can't eat apple because it's very difficult to get fresh food up on the space station. Question 9. What do scientists grow on a petri dish? So is it A, bacteria, B, jelly, C, dust, or D, fingerprints? What do scientists grow on a petri dish? Is it, if you think it's bacteria, just write A. If you think it's jelly, write B. If you think it's dust, write C. And if you think it's fingerprints, write D. Did I say D for dust? C for dust, and fingerprints, D. And the answer is bacteria. They grow bacteria on petri dishes. Last question, question 10. What do astronauts need to survive in space? Not outside the space station, but actually if they were living on the space station, what do they need to survive? So if they're going up to space for 6 months, like Tim Peake did to the ISS, what do they need to survive for those 6 months? So is it A, food, water, rest, and a spacesuit? Is it B, food, water, a camera, and toothpaste? Is it C, oxygen, food, water, and a computer? Or is it D, oxygen, food, water, and rest? So what do astronauts need to survive in space? And it's got to be all of one part. So if you think they need food, water, rest, and a spacesuit, all of those, then you're going to say A. If you think they need food, water, a camera, and toothpaste, you're going to write B. If you think they need oxygen, food, water, and a computer, you're going to write C. And if you think they need oxygen, food, water, and rest, you're going to write D. There are things it's nice to have in space and things they need to have if they go outside the space shuttle. But if they are on the ISS, what do they need? What 4 of those are essential? They have to have to survive. You might need a little bit longer to just think about that one, so you can pause the video. The answer is D. They need oxygen, food, water, and rest. If they're going out of the ISS, if they're making repairs or going for a spacewalk, then they need their spacesuit. But the rest of it isn't essential. They can survive in space without it. So how did you do? Are you an astrophile? That's someone who knows a lot about space. So did you get 11 out of 10? Now, I don't need your scores on Tapestry because we went through and did the answers, but what I would like to know, or what we would like to know, is what is your favourite thing you've learned about space this term? So we've done lots about the planets, about famous people who've gone into space, their discoveries. We've looked at how you keep healthy in space. What is the favourite thing that you have learned? And if you could just record that, whether you're speaking or writing it, and let us know, what have you really enjoyed learning about space? And I'll see you for our next lesson.